Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Muslim Glory podcast. My name is Raisa Ghazi, and today we're going to talk about Muslims in Indonesia, Islam in Indonesia, and I'm really excited about it. The last few episodes were about about Muslims arriving in the Americas before Columbus did. I spent 5 episodes on it, which I didn't expect because I was supposed to do only I think 4. Well, okay. Anyways, 5 is not that much, but anyways, it was a long one. Okay. And now this is the first time I'm kind of doing a new one since a while, and I'm really excited about it. So one thing I'm going to do this time though is I'm not going to be shoving everything in one session. Like I really want to kind of like have more time to just talk as well instead of like rushing through the text because last time I was just like, I had so many things I wanted to say and it was just like, I felt rushed, but I also felt a little bit like maybe I'm not doing it well because I'm just like, I'm kind of like on a schedule. Today I'm on a schedule too though. I was just stuck in traffic for 2 hours to get here. Like, can you believe it? I get car sick as well. But okay, anyways, we're here. Alhamdulillah, I don't want to complain. Okay. Anyways, we're going to talk about Islam in Indonesia. And I'm really excited about this topic because like for a long time, I really wanted to talk about them like all the time. But I was trying not to do it because I knew I had to do the podcast. And I thought, I just have to wait till the podcast and then say everything. Okay, but because the thing is like, I really started to feel like I was so like mesmerized by the Indonesians once I started learning about them. Like, they're so impressive as a country. And the thing is like, I cannot talk about everything obviously in their history because it's a lot, but I just want to highlight some things that I feel like are very important. And I think that other Muslims can really learn from. And that's what I'm going to do with this podcast. And that's what I'm always trying to do. I'm always trying to like highlight things that are really important for us Muslims to know. And inshallah, you'll do the same. Inshallah, I did the same also for the other ones, but also for this one. Okay, it's my phone. I should do like this. Okay, anyways, I should also do like this. Okay. Anyways, what am I going to talk about? First, I'm going to give you some general facts about Indonesia. And then I'm quickly going to go to the Netherlands in Indonesia. Okay, as you know, I'm Dutch, but the Dutch once occupied Indonesia. Other people would say colonized, but occupied, I think, is a better term because, they came to a place that was already highly civilized and then they just took it. They just took over. They just stole the land, the resources, and exploited the people. And so that's why we say occupying rather than colonizing, because colonizing implies that they came to a place that was like, not civilized and had to be built, and they came to bring civilization and development, which is what a lot of these colonizers and occupiers want to say, but they are actually occupiers. So that's something I try to keep myself sharp on, and it's something that you might want to know as well. So that's what we're first going to talk about. We're going to talk about the occupation of the Netherlands in Indonesia. And then we're going to talk about one war. And I think it's such I don't want to say exciting war. I'm sorry, because like loads of people died and that's not okay. But it's a war that in my opinion is very inspiring about how the Indonesians went about it. Okay. Like, I need to wait till we get there because like I actually want to talk about it immediately, but I cannot. So that's the second thing. Then we're going to talk about how the Dutch went about Islam in Indonesia. And I think this is so interesting. Like, it's so interesting because what it is that I kind of gather that every occupier just copy pastes the same pattern into a new place where they first come somewhere, they pretend to be nice people, and they come there, under the flag of, oh, we're here to trade or, help you. What they then quickly do is they try to take over as much as they can. And then what I see is that they always try to suppress Islam because I will not explain now. I'll explain it a little bit. But that's the copy paste they do. They always try to suppress Islam. First, they try to do it very calculated. Then they do it very openly. And this is something that has been happening for centuries, and it is still happening today. And so we're going to talk about that here as well. Then we're gonna talk about what is next. We're gonna talk about like the role of Mecca in this story, which is really interesting because I learned a lot about like the deep connections the Indonesians had with the holy city of Islam. And I mean, it's just very interesting how things happened, how the influence of Mecca actually reached Indonesia and what they did to the Dutch as a colonizer. Okay, then I'm going to tell you something really interesting. Like, I love this so much. I'm going to tell you about the similarities between the Soviets and the Dutch, okay? Because the copy-paste story I just told you about, like everybody does it. It's not just the Dutch, okay? So everybody does this copy-paste story where I just explained, they come somewhere, they try to take over, they try to suppress Islam, and then they do it first like very, a bit like they try to hide it, but then at some point they cannot hide that they have very malicious intentions. And so the Soviets have a story of their own, but this story of the Soviets actually became very big. So I need to tell you about it. Obviously, I need to tell you everything. And then I have Indonesians in the Netherlands now. I'm going to turn around my phone because I hate it when I see everything pop up. Okay, we're going to talk about Indonesians in the Netherlands now. And another thing I find very interesting. I find everything very interesting. Okay, and then we're going to talk about another topic which I recently learned a lot about. It's a crazy topic. It's the Ahmadiyya, which is like a sect within Islam. And there's a connection between Indonesia and this sect. And I didn't know about this, but after it did make sense to me. And so there's a lot to say about that. Then I'm also going to tell you about some propaganda right now against Indonesia. Even though this period of occupation is already over, there's still certain ways in which the imperialists try to keep power. And they also try to, maintain the narrative about Indonesia. And I think that's a very dangerous thing. So I really do want to share that with you. Oh, it's so exciting. Okay, anyways, I was supposed to put on the timer, but I did not. Anyways, I'm just going to guess that I took like 5 minutes to say this. I'm just going to do the timer for, let's say, 14 minutes so that I know when to shut up. No, not 14. I have to do 30. That's crazy. Okay. So I'm going to do 28, 27. All right. Okay. That means we're going to start with the first part of this, which is the general facts I want to share with you about Indonesia so that you can have a conversation about this and, know some of the, I would say, things that are a bit, basic in this story and will give you a good idea also about what you're talking about, okay? So because I want you, obviously, like my goal with telling people about Muslim glory is that you have these conversations in real life and that kind of like narratives that you need to be very careful of and like responses that you can give. And so that's why I want to also give you like a little bit of a lowdown before we start. Okay, so first of all, Indonesia, capital Jakarta, has the first largest population in the world. So it's a huge country, the third biggest democracy in the world. And then so the other two, the biggest ones are US and India. Interesting. And it is the number one biggest Muslim country in the world. So the most Muslims in one country live in Indonesia. So that's, I think, very interesting to know. And this is also a reason why Indonesia should be a country that all Muslims are very, I think, well versed on, because, a big part of our population of Muslims live there. That means that they represent Islam a lot. And, it's just actually unacceptable for us to not know a lot about them. It's the biggest Muslim country in the world. Like, we need to know about them and we need to be able to talk about them and also be able to, talk about them from our own perspective and not let others tell us about Indonesia. We need to know. Okay, so that's one thing. They have more than 281 million people. That's crazy. Okay, 87% of them are Muslims, and then 13% are others. I think I read it was like Catholics, Buddhists, Hindus. And so, like, and Bali, for example, the island Bali is actually a Hindu island, right? So even though they are the biggest Muslim country in the world, like one of their most famous islands is actually completely Hindu. I don't know if you've ever been there. I love Bali. I loved Bali back then. I went surfing there, and it's just a great destination. The people are really, really polite, very kind. And I think it's a great demonstration of, Hindus, I think. For me, it was like a really great way to get to know Asia a little bit better. That was my first contact. And so I was really like very impressed with them. Okay, so they speak Bahasa Indonesia. I hope I say that right. And then they have this is really cool because they have about 13,000 islands, more than 13,000. So 13,466. That's actually what I got from, the World Fact Book of CIA. I don't know if that's really, I feel so lame that I always consult such westernized sources, but I don't speak Arabic, so I don't have access to a lot else. This is all I could do, guys. I'm so sorry about it. But okay, only 922 of the islands actually have people living in them, which is also interesting because it means there's so many islands that nobody lives in. When I went to Bali, I only went to Bali in Indonesia. Yeah, I think so. Anyways, I thought it was really cool because Bali felt like a rainforest, kind of like jungle. Like there's just like plants everywhere. I feel you hear like animals everywhere. I was a little bit overwhelmed. I'm not gonna lie. I think the reason why is because like I was born and raised in a city. Like I was born and raised in Amsterdam. And for some reason, I always feel overwhelmed when I'm like completely surrounded by nature. I don't know why. It's really weird. It's like, I don't know if some type of trauma I have to heal or something. Okay. Anyways, they were occupied by the Netherlands until 1945. And I think that's really interesting because the Netherlands as an occupier is pretty brutal. So you already know this is going to be juicy because the Dutch, they are not afraid to do the things that are just a little bit outrageous, in my opinion. Okay, so I just want to share with you something I think is really interesting. Islam came to Indonesia through trade, okay? People always like to say that Islam is being spread by the word, okay? By the sword. People always like to say Islam is being spread by the sword. That's not true, okay? And a lot of people, they're like really allergic when I say that's not true, but it's not true. But Islamically speaking, that's not even allowed. If you look at how Islam was spread in the Americas, in Europe, even when it comes to Jerusalem, it wasn't spread by the sword. And that's something that I think is actually very iconic for Muslims because religiously speaking, we're not allowed to do that. And also, if you look at the history, it usually was being spread through trade and also sharing knowledge, but also exploration. And so one thing I find very interesting though is that in the three biggest democracies, this has not been the case, okay? So when it comes to the Europeans going to the three biggest democracies, India, US, Indonesia, they didn't spread through love and kindness and trade. They did not. They 100% occupied. They 100% exploited the people and unalived many of them. Extreme violence was used. I mean, even in this case of Indonesia, this has been researched very recently. There's been a lot of money taken out by the government, Dutch government, to find out how the Dutch took over in Indonesia, and it was by brutal violence, okay? We know the same thing happened for the US. The British, the Spaniards, the Portuguese, they came and they committed atrocities to get foot in those countries. The same happened in India. And so The funny thing is, however, okay, when it came to Portuguese and Spanish, even the British, they did do it in the name of Christianity. The Dutch, however, they did not go to other places to spread Christianity per se. For them, it was really a money thing. It's really almost a religion to some countries, gaining more money. And they were also not super, let's say, they weren't trying to hide it per se. The Dutch are very well known for loving that money shmoney though. And so that is something I think everybody knows. I mean, like the phrases the Dutch are known for are literally going Dutch, which means you're going to split the bill, right? So yeah, they do love a few coins like that. And, I think that's very interesting. Another thing I very recently learned, it's actually off topic, but I'm just going to talk about it anyways. I talk about Muslims knowing their histories so other people don't tell them who they are. Okay. This is the thing. Like, I stand by this, like from the bottom of my heart. Like, as a person, I stand by this because I always felt like people from a young age on were telling me who I was, but I wasn't. They were always like, you're just a little Miss Know-It-All, aren't you? And I was a geek, but I wasn't trying to be annoying about it. And I did think like people were trying to sometimes put me down, as a child, the way I was. And so that's where I started to learn you should never let people tell you who you are. You need to figure out for yourself who you want to be, obviously, but also who you are. Because like a lot of people, they really do try to look for the worst in a person. And, the same is happening for Muslims, People try to tell Muslims who they are, but you need to know who you are. And a lot of times what's very difficult nowadays is that for Muslims, they cannot defend themselves because there's so much fake news out there supporting the narrative of occupiers about who we are that sometimes it can be very difficult to tell people who we are. But that's why you need to know the real history of Muslims. Okay. For example, I just told you, like the Dutch they're very well known for not really caring so much about religion, their own religion, spreading their own religion. And they definitely don't care about respecting other people's religions. For some reason, the Dutch, even until today, they paint a picture about Muslims like we are the ones who have no respect for other religions. Like we have it somehow in our religion written that we should not respect other religions, which is not the case. It's actually the opposite. Our religion tells us we need to respect other religions. Let people do their own thing. We don't have to do it, but they should be able to do what they want to do. And history proves that. Okay. If you listen to my stories, history has proven that in Cordoba dynasty, for example, where the Muslims lived side by side with the Jews, with the Christians. I've told you about this story, right? Where even the Moroccans who are nowadays being villainized in the Netherlands, being called anti-Semitic, they were the ones during World War II protecting the Jews. They were a country very certain about not wanting to deport the Jews. Very recently, I did find out something very interesting because I found out in the National Archive of the Dutch that they were being paid 750 guilder, which is, was it 750 or 250? Wait, let me check it just to be sure, because this is a really juicy fact. They were being paid. I'm just going to check to be sure. I already made like a note that I had to like make a reel about it, but I actually wrote down the exact number because the number is pretty juicy. Did I not? I thought I did. What did I do? How was it? Okay, I know how to find it because the funny thing is there was a name they were using to call the people, to indicate the people who were going after Jews. And I think they were getting 250 dirham maybe. Or were they getting 750 dirham? like 750. I have to think about this. I think it was 750. Archief. Beloning, it means like, I'm just gonna see 250 Florijn Nationaal Archief. Nederlanders. Nederland, Joden, jagen, loning. Why did I? Oh yeah, found it. Okay, so this is the thing. The Dutch, during Second World War, were offered, I cannot, it's so crazy. They were offered 7.5 guilder per Jew. So if a Dutch person would snitch on a Jew, they would get 7.5 guilder. 7.5 guilder is the equivalent of 10 dirham. This is maybe 12. They would get 12 dirham just to snitch on a Jew. Okay. And guess what? They snitched on hundreds and thousands of Jews. In fact, it turned out that 300,000 Dutch people were actually working side by side with the Nazis. And so it's funny because like the Dutch government nowadays is trying to paint a picture that we Muslims in our core, in our culture are, taught to hate Jews, but like they literally have a history to prove for it. The term, this makes me laugh so much. The term they used to call a person who was snitching on Jews to get 12 dirham was Jew hunter. Okay. There were many Jew hunters in the Netherlands. And then they had the audacity to actually try to pin that on us. This is why you need to know your history. I mean, for Dutch people, I just want to remind you, you could literally read about this in Oorlogsbronnen. I think there was also the Nationaal Archief, which is like the National Archive of the Netherlands, who actually had like the official, I think maybe pamphlets or news articles, showing that this was a thing back then. Anyways, it has nothing to do with Indonesia, but I just want to illustrate how important it is for you to know your history. Okay. And so to get back to the story, Islam was being spread not by the sword, but by trade and by, exploring. And that's how Islam was spread in Indonesia, not with the sword, not with gunpowder, not like how the Europeans did that all over the world. That's just what I wanted to say. And it took me 15 minutes to do it. Anyways, then we get to point number 2, which is the war I've been like dying to talk about, right? Which is the Padri War. Okay. It was a war basically between 1784 to 1841. No, actually a little bit earlier as well. Well, no, that's it. Actually, that's the one I got. The thing is, it happened in West Sumatra, which is in Indonesia, between the Padri, which was the purified kind of like movement within Islam, who had very close ties to Saudi Arabia because they were actually going there learning about Islam, versus, what they've been told by traders who were coming to teach the people about Islam. They actually went there to learn by themselves. And basically the Padri were having a conflict with the traditionalist Indonesians. Those were called the Adat, because the Padri were saying, Muslims, if you're a true Muslim, you shouldn't drink, you shouldn't gamble, you shouldn't do like fights or drugs, like all those things are not allowed. And so there was a lot of tension between these groups because the one group, the Adat, didn't want to give into that. While the Padri was like, we know what Islam is about. They were trying to do it in a very, I would say, peaceful way, but in the end, these things, they do come to a clash eventually. What I find very annoying about this story, though, is that the Dutch obviously took this as a way to assert more influence, to gain more power within Indonesia. And so what they did, and this is what I said, a copy paste of what occupiers do, a copy paste that happened in Indonesia. They started funding the Adat. They started fighting together with the Adat against the Padri. Okay. And that's what they do. They try to find any type of conflict between Muslims. They try to find sensitivities. They try to find weaknesses, and occupiers, they swoop in, start funding one part of them, also radicalizing them against the other party. And in this case, this is a tale. This is the copy paste they do. They started telling the Adat, obviously, you guys are the good Muslims, and the other ones are the extremists. Like, they're the ones who are dangerous. They're the ones who are true Muslims, and Islam is about violence, it's about aggression. That's how they did it. What's beautiful, though, about this story in Indonesia is that the Adat at some point realized by themselves that they had more respect for the Padri than they did for the Dutch. The Dutch were going around, disrespecting the mosques, sexually assaulting the women. They were causing a lot of death and destruction. And the Adat saw that, and they said, you know what? We cannot identify with a group of people like that. And that's when they actually joined forces with the Padri to fight against the Dutch. And that's how Indonesia became unified in Islam. And I've mentioned this many times. This is how Indonesia became one, by accepting Islam together and then pushing back against the occupier. And they won. They won. This is how they won. And so this is something that, the Dutch have a lot of experience with, that, when they took slaves from the Malay community to South Africa, they knew Muslims are going to rise up. They're going to break free and they're going to go against the occupier. When they took Muslims from Africa to South America and North America, South America to work there, they knew the Muslims are the ones that are going to break free, escape, and actually start a revolution against the occupation. And so the Dutch already had a very bad experience with Islam, because they knew this is the religion of people who are strong. When they unify, imagine how much stronger they will be. And so it's no surprise that also here, the Dutch became very calculated in how to break down Islam. And that's a thing that I really want to share with you today. Really want to dive deeper into how did they try to break down Islam just so they could gain more money, more power, more land, get people to become their slaves. How did they try to break down Islam? And that's a question you need to ask yourself everywhere. Everywhere you go in these countries, what you see is that these occupiers, they focus on breaking down Islam. And that's something like at this point, I feel like learning about all these different countries has made me also very, I don't know if it's bitter. I feel like I was already bitter before that. But it has made me more aware of it's just it's such a tacky copy and paste. It's such a tacky way of just copy and pasting the same method everywhere, of being calculated, of being sly, of being sneaky, of being greedy, of being violent. And they just keep repeating that. And that's something that I also feel like we as Muslims need to be more aware, or to be more strong, and that's the thing about Indonesia. Indonesia has shown in many ways that they were not breakable by the occupier. They were not to be messed with. They were not to be, let's say, what is the word for it? misled. They were not going to be misled. They were not going to be manipulated. That's the Indonesians. And that's why I love this story. And that's why you need to learn about the Padri War, where two sides of Muslims were fighting against each other, but they unified in Islam, choosing to follow the pure side of Islam and, leaving behind the traditional pre-Islamic ways just so they could overcome their occupier. And that's, mashallah, I love Indonesia. And, I don't know, I respect them so much, I respect Indonesia so much. I don't know so many Indonesian people, but I do think that every time I meet them, I just like them. They're very graceful, refined, and you can see, these are people with honor, honorable people. And I think we should all aspire to be like that. Okay. Anyways, how much time do I have left? I just go, oh my God, it went so fast. I literally talked too much. Okay, anyways, I have like 7 minutes left, I think. Ooh, okay, anyways. Okay, I feel like the pressure because now I have so many things I still wanted to say. Okay, quickly. Okay, anyways. The Dutch fear of Islam. We're gonna go a little bit deeper into that. Okay, listen, the thing is, I want to tell you something about Mecca. And I just want to talk about Mecca forever, to be honest. Like, I don't even want to spend 7 minutes on it. I want to spend like 2 hours on it. Okay, one thing that happened also in Indonesia is that when the Indonesians also started learning from, is about Islam in Saudi Arabia, in Mecca particularly, where in Mecca they also had, a population of thousands of Indonesians who were there studying there. And one thing that's really beautiful about Mecca, I think, and I think this is a beautiful example for all of us, is that Mecca is this example, a perfect example of what, our Prophet, peace be upon him, actually meant when in his final sermon, he said, we are actually supposed to, live side by side as a brotherhood as Muslims. Arabs are not better than black people are not better than Arabs, white people are not, I think it's like white people are not better than black people are not better than white people, and Arabs are not better than non-Arabs, and non-Arabs aren't better than Arabs. That's one of the final words of our Prophet, peace be upon him. And I feel like Mecca is like such a good example of that, because I don't know if you've been, but if you've been, you're sitting down with everyone together. You're eating cookies, dates, sharing that with everyone. I remember there's this aunties from Asia, hand feeding you dates. Then there's these Turkish ladies who are from a village where they, I don't know, make pistachio nuts or something, and you're eating chocolates together. There's a doctor from Egypt who is helping the lady who is from Saudi Arabia who has cramps in her legs. That is Islam, and that is Mecca. And that's why I love Mecca so much. People always say Medina is the best place, but I love Mecca so much. I try to go there at least 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times per year if I can. Why not? I live in the Middle East, why not? And so what's really cool lately, there's this video going around of Martin Luther King, and he's actually talking about, he comes from a society of major division, major exclusion, a lot of violence against black people. And then he talks about, he's actually in a place for the first time in his life where, people who are blonde and blue eyes and people who are black are sitting side by side, eating from the same plate, drinking from the same glass. And for him, this was one thing that really drew him towards Islam, right? And I think that truly is the power of Islam. And I just get so excited when I talk about that, because it just brings me back to those moments, that's such a good feeling. Okay, anyways. So the thing with Indonesia, obviously, is they were a country of more than 13,000 islands. I'm pretty sure that apart from perhaps the nationality of the passport, they didn't have so much in common with each other, right? Because these people had different languages. They had different religions at some point as well. They had different ways of dressing. They had, different customs, rituals, and Islam unified them, right? And that's what I feel like happens when you're in Mecca. Like you see so many different people. They dress all so differently. You can immediately see the glittery people are like, Asians, like the people who dress like they're like a part of the Downtown Abbey cast are from Europe, by the way. Then you have the glittery abayas from like the GCC. It's like you can see so many different people, but in Islam, you're all unified, right? And that was also a big fear of the Dutch because like I said, they had experienced so many issues with Muslims all around the world. Okay. Okay. Anyways, what more can I say about this? The Dutch, it's not just the Dutch, by the way, right? Because like if you look at the history of exploration, Columbus at the time before he even, I got scared. Okay, anyways, Columbus, before he started, unaliving people and stealing everything in Americas, he was actually going around in the world, like in Asia, Africa, to steal things there with another prince from Portugal. His name was Prince Henry. And one story I find very interesting is when Columbus and Prince Henry from Portugal were going around being pirates, they would openly say, like Prince Henry would openly say that, some parts of the world were not accessible to them because they could feel the strong presence of Muslims. And that's the thing, when Muslims truly come together, people know you better not get in there. You better not go in there to try to hurt someone, to try to cause division, because that's not what's gonna happen. And so, that's something that I think we all need to remember. And this is also, in my opinion, the reason why so many of these occupying nations, they do this propaganda, these campaigns against Muslims saying, they're trying to bring freedom. They're trying to bring freedom here. It's funny because in the literature of all these occupiers going to places where they have no business going, they talk about how they went there to bring freedom. Okay. They went there to bring freedom because the Muslims are oppressed. Like one thing every Muslim really needs to put in their head is that freedom is something that is defined by the person using that word. Okay. I mean, Islam gives you freedom. If you want to be free from addiction, you should be a Muslim. If you want to be free from greed, you should be a Muslim. If you as a woman want to be freed of people objectifying your body, you should be a Muslim. I mean, it depends on, right, what you want to be free of. If, in the contrary, you want to be free of rules that, protect you from consumerism, protect you from addiction. You want to be free from these protections against all these harmful things. Then you shouldn't be a Muslim. No, then Islam is not good for you. But when people talk about freedom, ask them, what are you supposed to free me from? Because in my opinion, Islam is going to give you the most free life you can ask for. But it depends on what you want, right? And the funny thing is, I think I heard Mohammed Hijab once talk about it. Actual liberals, especially actual liberals, especially women. I think I once watched a video. Mohammed Hijab said, actual liberal women are the unhappiest women in a society. I was like, okay. And if you look at the different religions, Muslims tend to be the happiest. So, this idea, this concept of freedom in liberal countries in the West, it's not really working out for you, is it? And that's something that every Muslim, when you hear the word freedom, ask the person talking about this freedom, what you're freeing them from. Okay? Because I would like to be free from consumerism. I would like to be free from addiction. I would like to be free from people objectifying me. That's what I would like to be free from. But okay, to each your own, obviously. Okay, anyways, I think we need to, I need to stop now. I need to just stop and then do the next part in the second part. I actually made so like less information this time, so I wouldn't actually talk too much. I would have the time to talk much. Okay, anyways, I've talked too much again. Anyways, I want to thank you for watching the first podcast. My name is Raisa Ghazi. I'm a public speaker worldwide. And if you want to become a public speaker, just like me, who travels the world and gives speeches, I used to be a leadership lecturer at university and at companies and at events and conferences. Semi-retired now, but I'm teaching others how to do it. Make sure to sign up for my 200-step plan for $4.99. And you can find the link in my bio. And inshallah, I will see you again next time. Make sure to subscribe to my channel, please, because I'm looking for a few more followers. And then I will see you again in the next episode where I will continue all of this. And I have so many more exciting things to tell you. Like, honestly, I feel like, no, I always say everything. I always say, no, this is better. This is more interesting. No, it's all interesting. Anyways, just be there next time. Okay. Thank you so much.